Why do most of these new agency owners fail?
Well, most of ours don't fail. I'll tell you some fun
Not
stats.
yours, but
Yeah. I took a small beta group of 10 guys, and the average guy made $6,000 their first month, made $19,000 their second month, made $34,000 their third month. That's the average. Top 20% was already $80,000 by month 3.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Jason Capital here, and I am at the California temporary home of one Mr. Alex Hormozi. Alex, how's it going? Good. Looking jacked as ever.
Thanks.
So, congratulations on that.
Switched from regular Coke to diet. Changed my life.
So we did an interview like this about a year ago at your gym, in actually your garage gym in Texas, which was awesome. Feedback on it was insane. A lot of people want to hear part 2 a year later, so that's just what we're going to crack into. So let's just get right into it. You were just continue with what we're talking about. You were talking about selling stuff.
Yes.
Chat selling and phone selling, and where were you going with that? Let's just start there.
Oh man. So over the last, I've been selling stuff, face to face. I was selling for 4 years. We did 4,000 one-on-one closes, and so I felt really good about sales in general. And then transitioning to selling online, I learned a lot of different things about just the difference in selling environment. And I went through tons of different courses around those types of sales. And I feel like I've had when you swallow tons of information, you have a couple crystallizations that happen.
Yeah.
And one of them was what I'm just calling the 7 components of a closed deal. And so, everyone has lists and whatnot, but I think overall, for a large period of time, my belief was that there's only 3 objections that can come up on a sale. One is I need decision maker, right? I don't have the authority to make the decision. Mm-hmm. The second was I need to think about it, like a delay close. And then third was price, right? And I was like, you just need to understand those 3, and then you should be able to close it, right? And that's pretty much what I preached for 3.5, plus the years that I was selling the gym, 6-7 years is what I preached, besides the main pitch, right? And I now feel like I've since learned a few more nuances to it that have helped me a lot out when selling clients. And so there's 4 that are required from the buyer and 3 that are required from the seller. And so that's what makes the 7.
Okay.
And so the 4 from the buyer is something that I learned from the software world, which they call BANT, which you may be familiar with. I wasn't familiar with the term, but it's budget, authority, need, timing.
Okay.
And what's interesting about this is that every one of those, and so this came from IBM from the 1960s, they figured out, they did this huge quantitative analysis, and they were like, they had so much business coming in, the phones are ringing off the hook, and they're like, how do we just know exactly who's a qualified prospect to pass to a closer? And so they, in the software world especially, they separate setters from closers. It's it's a very specific role. SDRs and AEs typically is what they call them.
Okay.
And so in order for a prospect to get qualified, that's like a job, is to qualify prospects and then pass them. And BANT is the requirement. And they know that if they do not have one of those 4, they cannot close the deal. And so they must have those 4 to get passed on. And so in thinking about that, it really affected a lot about how I see friction in the application process of bringing prospects in. Is I could front load all of those 4 questions onto an application, or I could just collect information and then put that on a qualification process with a first call. But at the end of the day, those 4 questions have to be met from a buyer to become somebody I can pitch, right? On the flip side, what the buyer needs from us is that they trust us for 3 different things. And this was what was different from what I used to believe. And so it's just, do they trust that this product is going to solve their needs in the way that they want them to be solved? It's not just their needs, but just because you might want to lose weight, but you might not want to do surgery. Or you might want to lose weight, but you might not want to exercise. You might just want to diet. So it's will this solve my problem in the way that I want to have it solved? Number 1. Number 2, do I trust me, the salesperson? Because they might believe that, but not trust you, which then influences whether they're going to buy from you.
Sure.
And then the third is whether they trust the company, whether it's a scam or legit, or it's going to be here. And so what's interesting is that you can see the differences in those 3 pieces on the seller side in the selling environment. And so if you're selling in person, you automatically have the business because they walked in. You're halfway there with the salesman as long as you don't fuck it up, right? And so you really just need to focus on selling the product, right? Because they already know that you're a legit business because they walked in. They know that you're not going anywhere because you're sitting at the desk. And so it's just is this thing going to help me? And so when we transitioned to phone sales and online sales, there was way less trust in those environments. And so we had to be specific about creating that trust in both the marketing process, but also in the scripting we had around the sales. And so when and the reason I started with the 3 obstacles that I thought were presented is that I now have a different belief around those, which is just that 1, every buyer has to qualify for those. But once they're on the call, any of those things that come up are simply symptoms or smoke screens of a lack of trust in me, lack of trust in the business, or lack of trust in that the product's going to solve the problem. And so now we see them as like, okay, if they say I need to think about it, it means they're not convinced in the product. And so then we're going to be like, totally understand where you're coming from. And we're going to talk more about the product and come back around and then ask for the sale again. And so if they're like, you know what, I need to think about it. Sorry, no, I need to think about it. Like I have to talk to my spouse. They're going to be like, I don't trust you, is what they want to say, but they're not going to say that. And so then we're going to qualify ourselves, not in an arrogant way, but just be like, totally understand where you're coming from. I've worked with 300 different gym owners who have been in your exact same situation, and then we tell them their own story, right, back to them. And each of these guys was able to achieve on average this much. And so I totally understand where you're coming from, but I'm not asking you to make a lifetime commitment. I'm just asking you to make a soft yes. And so if we make you, and then we do a reasonable close, which is essentially asking a reasonable question to precede the yes for a close. And so this was actually one of the biggest things that we've changed in our entire sales process was when I used to sell, and obviously if you're good at sales, you can sell even if you don't know what you're doing, right? But I think as you try and repeat sales in process across teams and across companies, you have to be way more specific about it. And so with the reasonableness, I used to be like, doesn't that sound awesome? You ready to start tomorrow? You ready to start on Monday? People would be like, yeah. But when I have a team, I want to ask a simple question that's a lower bar. I don't want to say, does it sound amazing? Because people are like, no, it doesn't sound amazing. It sounds like a lot of work, right? But I want to say something more reasonable like, so if this does everything that I say it does, or half of what I say it does, do you think the price that we're asking for is reasonable? And they're going to be like, yeah, that sounds reasonable. We'll be like, awesome. Then let's get you started. And so we lower the bar of what we're asking them to say yes to. And as soon as they say yes, like, does that sound fair? Does that sound reasonable? Fair enough? Like all of those types of closes are reason closes that we then smooth right into the actual like, cool, then let's knock out the paperwork. And so it lowers the bar, and it also, in my opinion, makes the close way more logical. And so you get a lot less backouts and hot buyers or hot sellers. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So anyways, I just ranted about that, but that's some of the top of my
That was
stuff.
great. So how is that, what's been the biggest difference then in terms of how you train your sales teams, your managers, in terms of like if it's not time or stall decision maker money? What's the difference?
Yeah. So the way that we do it is we collect info in our applications just to make sure that they're the right type of customer, right avatar. So the application is more for the avatar than it is for the BANT, right? We use BANT on the qualifier. So we have one person who qualifies all the leads. So people book on the calendars, but they get removed from the calendar if they're not qualified. So they have to qualify themselves.
Based on the application?
Based on messaging someone saying, hey, you need to have these things in order to take the call.
So they fill out the application and then there's a messaging that bans them.
Yes.
They have to check the boxes.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And what's interesting is that when you say it via conversation, it's way less offensive than if it's on the application for some reason. And so we just pushed it one step back, and it actually worked way better.
Like, applications are
Yeah,
dicks.
yeah. Do I have $10,000? Like,
how dare you?
Yeah, exactly.
Computer ask me this question.
Yeah, but like if someone's like, hey, by the way, this thing's 10 grand. Like, do you have that, or should we just move on to somebody else? And they're like, no, I had that. Like,
so
cool.
After they fill out the application, how soon do they get a text?
Immediate.
Is there someone who's just waiting?
Yeah, totally.
And it just says, hey, we saw your application, and I want to ask a couple questions before.
Exactly.
Or is it cool if we get
and we can do
now?
phone call, we do text, we do whatever they prefer. We're pretty flexible with that stuff.
Okay.
And then obviously we have the closing. But the way that we've changed operationally as a team is that I got really frustrated. So this may be for anybody who has a sales team that is an owner. My team was closing 12% of first calls, and that was, now we were high enough ticket that it was still fine, but I was still really frustrated with that. And so I hadn't been over sales in 2 or 3 years. I mean, like I hadn't directly managed sales. And so I kind of went back in, and I was like, you need daily reinforcement. You need to sharpen your axe every day if you're going to chop wood for 8 hours. And so we started training daily. And so I split the tasks into the component parts of the skills that are required to be a good salesperson. And so, half of sales, at least for a phone salesperson or a Zoom salesperson, is talking, and the other half is listening. And so for half of the 60 minutes in the morning, they spend reading the script out loud with the correct tonality, and they read it 3 times through without messing up. If they mess up, they go to the top again, right? And they
Are they doing this with a partner?
Yeah.
Like role play?
Yeah, exactly. When they actually meet up, they meet up together. They mute themselves. They go through that part, and then the second half, they go through a call from the day before from one of the guys, and they either pick about where they did well or where they didn't do well, where they missed something or a tonality dropped and they didn't attack, or there was a belief pattern that they didn't confront and then blew up in the close, like things like that.
Yeah.
And in the talking piece, they'll also practice their loops. And so we have 3 loops that we practice. One is about trusting me, one is about trusting the product, and the other about trusting the company. And so based on the obstacle they have, we always agree with them, be like, totally understand where you're coming from. And then we ignore it and loop all the way back around and ask again. Right? And so it's really, in theory, you could have infinite loops, but you're usually constrained by time. So usually we can get 3 or 4 loops in. And that is what allows us to now, after we implemented this process in this daily cadence for training, like last week was 44% of first calls, right? Yeah, simply by improving the skill, right? And so what anybody who's in sales will understand that it's not the words. The words are 10% of it. Like I could give you Chris Rock's entire routine and you could read it and it would probably bomb. It's all about the delivery, right? And so getting them to practice the proper tonality at the right points. Where do I lower my voice so you think this is more important, right? And where do I be like, absolutely, totally understand. Where am I going to say something, an obvious statement to embed a belief of something that's really positive, but I'm going to say it as though it's obvious and a preconceived like notion that you should obviously know. Right. And so where am I going to use these different tonalities at different parts of the script so that I can be more persuasive? And so we layered those pieces in to our own scripting and how we drilled. And then this is just a practice. So every morning the sales team gets up. I can show you my phone. I have up at 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning when they all wake up together. And they practice first thing before they, think about their wives, before they think about their kids. They practice for an hour. And I think part of that's also setting the intention for the day of like, I'm a closer. I'm here to close. I'm here to make sales. And I'm not here to take orders. I'm here to order people. And so by doing that, that's what's created a culture of high performance. And so when we get a new sales guy who comes on, if they're in that lion's den, like they will not, if they're like, you guys wake up at 4? It's like, yeah.
Matter of fact.
Yeah. Like you don't. You're going to practice. It's just like you're practicing with us. And if you're not going to, then there's really no point in you being here. Because there's no way you're going to beat us. Because just like Kobe, like they're doing an hour every day of deliberate practice, 6 days a week. Our guys train 6. They only have to do 5. They still meet on Saturday mornings and train. And that's just the culture. And that's the special sauce that gets the extra oomph that happens that is harder to replicate. But the training process itself can be replicated by anyone. And will typically, 2x your sales just from that one piece.
3.5.
Yeah, that was process plus culture. So yeah.
That's awesome.
That's how we sell stuff.
Yeah. Were they doing training like that before?
No.
They weren't. No. What did the training look like before?
Before it was probably standard. It was 2 weeks of they'd go through, training the course. They would role play, with some of the sales guys that were established, and they would do ride-alongs for a little bit, and they would listen to usually about 20 different sales calls, recordings, and then at that point we put them on. And then, in 7 days, if they're not closing, then
you'll find out.
Right, they're not.
They reveal. Yeah, got it.
Exactly.
So, have you found a way to transfer some of this culture and training cadences into your training your chat?
Everything.
Agents?
Yes.
So what are they doing?
Yeah. And so what are the component parts of somebody who does chat? They have to read and they have to be able to type. And so what they do is our guys train on typing speed every morning because I can increase their throughput typically by double. So if I can get you to do twice as many chats a day, you can sell twice as many people per day, right? And so we train on typing. And so they actually go through, and the nice thing is there's tons of really established, typing trainings. Oh yeah, tons, and they're free. But the one that we have is super cheap, and I can see everyone's, and I see their logs. I can see their speed improve. I can see what time they're logging, all that stuff. And then on the flip side is reading comprehension, and there's tons of programs online to help people read and comprehend information faster. And so if I can improve, and what I like about this as a business owner is that I feel like I'm actually like really improving and investing in our employees, because anybody who can read and type faster is a more valuable human. Fundamentally, right? And to the same degree, somebody who can listen and detect language patterns and tonality shifts will be a more persuasive individual, which will help them in their life overall. And so I'm trying to break down all of the departments that we have into the component skills that are required and create daily trainings for each of them. Right now, I'm done 3 departments, but we're just continuing to move down because of the huge increase in throughput that we had for the sales team. I was like, and it's more prevalent for repeated action departments. So departments that like customer service would be a department that would do. Typically, they confront the same problems every day. And so it's like, this is repeated action. What are the skills that are required? How can we break them into component parts? And then how can we practice them? And then what is the primary KPI for that department so that they can always see that thing's moving in the right direction? Is it time of resolution? If it's a customer service rep, if it's chat, it's how quickly can we get someone scheduled? If it's a salesperson, what's their percentage of first calls closed? Whatever those stats are.
So in the typing training.
Which training?
The typing training for the agents. Is that Are you having them just type whatever the software does for practices, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's just whatever they might have them type whatever it is.
Gotcha. Okay, it's not related to the actual scripts.
No.
Okay.
No. It's actually it's very straightforward because we're not selling anything. We're doing 6-inch putts. We're just getting people over the edge where people just need to be followed up with, and so it takes way less ingenuity and way more just effort.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's not a short. It's just it's just effort.
Yeah.
There's not nearly as much nuance. There is. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to anybody on my team who's listening. Like, it's not like it's easy, but compared to somebody who's closing, there's way more nuance in it.
Sure. Okay. So I want to shift gears real quick, and I want to talk a little bit about onboarding and choreography.
Cool.
Yeah. You see, I got a checklist here. I'm gonna get what I want. Came for, all right. So obviously in GymLaunch, you guys have helped an enormous amount of gyms in a very short amount of time, like transform lives and children and like really made an impact with that. And you were able to extract results from people who previous people that paid could not extract those results from. And I think a big part of it is, I think you've said to me in the past where you like force success out of people where they don't have a choice, right? Yeah. So can you just walk me through, like, how did it look at the very beginning, the onboarding, and then what were the big distinctions or changes you guys made to force success out of people and get some of those success stories?
So I think there's a lot of different components, but I'll try and break down the fewest ones. So the first one is price. Like, price alone will get, the more someone pays, the more they'll pay attention. The more invested they are, the more invested they'll be. And so simply charging more for your services will automatically get you, A, higher quality customers who are more likely to implement, and B, they're more likely to implement because of their investment. So it's kind of both sides of it. It's like you have a higher quality individual and you have a more higher investment from that individual. So both of those things together can create an environment that's more likely for someone to succeed. So that's like piece number one, very straightforward. Number two is the mousetrap that we're trying to build and trying to teach them. And so that's, if I had a program, like, it'd be so easy for me to sell like how to make money online, for example. But I would know that if I just wanted to make it as a general theory course, then I would know that automatically, 1 out of 20 would be able to have all of the requisite skills and personality and beliefs to accomplish it. And so I can't do that, or I can't sleep with that. I want to try and figure out ways that I can get 80 or 90% of people to be successful. And so what that means is I sacrifice sometimes teaching people how to have a $100 million business so that I can teach everyone how to have a $1 million business. And I've made that decision, and Elon Musk actually was quoted about this. He's like, I could either help a small amount of people a lot, or help a lot of people a little. And he's like, I'd rather help a lot of people a little bit. And so that's kind of where I think about this, is like, rather than have 10 people who I take to 100 million, I'd rather have, 1,000 people I take to 1 million. Even though it's the same total overall, I feel like that makes far more impact. And so when we build the mousetraps themselves, we're looking for, we always base on averages and medians. It's not like, do we have testimonials? I have testimonials from every single test we ever run, but that doesn't mean it's effective because one guy is a stud and can close $5,000 sales over the phone. Doesn't mean everyone is. And so when we're thinking about the offers, the price points, the downsells, the upsells, the choreography for their clients to go through their mousetrap, I think, and test each of those pieces. And so, for example, the online gym model that we recently had to pivot all of our gyms over to, there's 4 component parts to the business, and then each of those parts has had at least 5 different iterations that we've tested. And so if you're looking at that, you've got 20 different tests that we had to run with small 5 to 10 gym beta groups, and then we'd measure the results and see if it was above or below the average prior. And if it was above, we implemented it, and if it was below, then we just disregarded it. And so that came with the offers, that came with the price point for the first sale, that came with the price point and the selling process for the second sale, and the same for the third sale, walking them through that. And so that's, again, so first is the price. Second is the mousetrap that they're actually implementing. Is it built for mass success, or is it built for individual high achievers, which is a big difference.
Right.
And then third is focusing on, because you talked about onboarding, is focusing on activation instead of churn. And so I got this again from the software world, which is why software's been really good for me as an entrepreneur. I've learned a lot. But the software world's all about activation and not churn. Churn is a lagging indicator. It's like you're looking at your churn and trying to make it go down. It's really difficult to do that because it takes usually 2 or 3 months for any thing that you do to show an effect, which means that if you're actually testing something in theory, you only have 4 tests a year you can run. Because if it takes 3 months to actually test and see if it improved, then you can only do 1 implementation, wait 3 months, 1 implementation, wait 3 months. Yeah. And so if you're in a competitive space, you can't only change 4 things a year. And so it's way easier to look for a leading indicator like activation to figure out or reverse engineer a client that's going to stay. And so the process of looking through that is, what are our best clients? And taking all of those, cutting everyone else out, and then basically turning back the clock and saying, what are the attributes of these clients, right? And that affects the application questions that I'm screening for them specifically. And then from there, what are their other component parts? Did they have employees? How many of them they had? Did they have multiple locations? What type of gyms were they? What geographic locations were they in? All of those things are going to factor into, whether someone was successful or not. And so if we can get that client avatar right, and then we also know that they attended each of their calls on time, and we know that they launched within their first 7 days, and we know that they made their first $2,000 sale within their first 14 days, then we're going to try and reverse that and then try and incentivize those actions. So either through carrot or stick. So if someone signs on with us and we say, cool, you have 4 onboarding calls that you have to attend, and if you don't, we're going to bill you $500 for every call you miss, then someone's really, really motivated to make sure they attend those calls. And so then I can reverse engineer the activation sequences that someone...
Incentivize the activation points.
Right, exactly.
Is that what you did? Did you actually do the $500?
So we are big on penalty fees in general. But yeah, they know that they have other things that they don't get access to. We also hold information hostage. It's another way of doing it that's not as aggressive. So it's you don't get access to the information, so you attend these things. And so then it's things like that are awesome. Easier to implement to get people to stick. But we use the penalties in the fitness business. Yeah. So for those clients, they have 3 calls they have to attend: their supplement sale, the continuity sale, and the second continuity sale. And so once they sold a trial, they're sold on the fact that they have to go to these things or they will get billed. And so with that, then we make sure that they show up for the sales appointments, which we know are going to be conversion.
So on the Ascension sale call, whatever it is, whether it's for the fitness business, your businesses, or whatever, that call also has an incentive around it that they have to attend.
Yeah, for the fitness businesses. For ours, it's a different incentive. It's just more you're not going to get the thing.
Right. And what is the framing on that call?
I don't think we have too much of a frame. It's this is just how we do it.
Like a check-in call.
Yeah, this is, so because we're a performance business, which is kind of interesting, there's only one way for us to make a customer more valuable for us, which is just get them to basically make more money. And so the way to do that is we have to increase their availability, so to increase the amount of times they can take sales calls, increase their ad spend so we can get them more people in the door, and then ultimately increase their close ratio, which is kind of indirect to whether they're going to be successful and stay. Right. And so all of the efforts that we have are trying to not upsell, but try and get people to we try to get you to make more money so that we can make more money.
Right.
And basically increasing the amount of throughput that we can drive through their facility, whether it be online or in person, so that they can make more money in the second way.
How big of a role do you think reverse engineering those activation points and then aligning incentives so they happen in the way that you want plays on how many people ascend to the second thing and the third thing?
Huge. Based on the research, Layla quoted this, so it's not me. Most people make the decision whether they want to stay with your company between the sale and the first call that they have. So not even when they've tried your product, just through their experience between when they were sold and what their first real touch point is with the company, how they've been treated during that period of time, they've made their decision of whether or not they want to stay with you.
Gotcha. And then they'll stay consistent.
Yeah, and so either you're playing catch up, right, and you're screwed and you're going uphill, or you already have some trust and some goodwill on your side that you can continue to bank on.
What are some of your favorite things to do between sale and first call?
We send handwritten cards. We send stuffed animals. We make sure that everything is always documented. Everything that's verbal is also documented in writing. So it's I'm going to tell you right now what's going to happen next. You're also going to get an email after this call that says everything that I'm saying right now. If you have questions, reference the email. Yep. You're also going to get a recording of this call that's also going to be sent in the email, so if you need to watch this again or show it to your team, right? And so the next call is on Tuesday. That's the 3rd. That's in 3 days from now, right? And so on there, you're going to need these 3 things. And between now and then, if you don't give me those 3 things, I can't give you access to this thing. Cool? Great. So please send me back those things or I won't be able to do this call with you. You know what I mean? And so then it's really just clarity. It's just communication.
It's conviction and it's clarity. It also makes them feel safe.
Yeah.
Right.
Because people just want to know what happens
anxiety
next.
about aftermath. I don't remember any of that shit now. You got it. I can trust you.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, I think about the old Dan Kennedy quote about with their umbilical cord looking to plug in. And I think a lot of people are just looking to abdicate everything. And if they meet someone who's just I'll do everything for you and you just hear it, that kind of thing. I think it makes an enormous difference. Okay, so I have a couple questions for my team. I'm gonna go to these right now. They literally, I had them Slack me. I was like, because just so you guys, Zach and Wally specifically, I know that you guys love Alex and his podcast. So Zach had a question. You mentioned in a podcast at some point, but I hate when I'm being interviewed and someone's like, you once said this. But you said in the podcast, you said about a focus coach, an attention
Yeah.
coach. What is there? Is that a real thing? What was
Yeah, it was a real thing. Yeah. So basically, I spent 90 minutes every day talking to the same coach, and he would just be like, "What's on your mind?" And so it basically would just clear things, it would just clear items. And so if it was like, "This is something I'm concerned about," or "This thing with my mom came up," or it's just like I had so much, he called them confusions, but basically things that were just draining my attention. Mm-hmm. And so clearing those things is really just a function of understanding what they are. And so a lot of times we have these misunderstoods, these things that have happened in our past that we don't understand them, and so they block up, they hold attention basically. And then once you can release those, you get the attention back. Mm-hmm. And so there's just a deliberate process of thinking, like kind of like auditing yourself and thinking like, okay, what are the things that are on my mind right now? What are the things that are taking my attention? And then what of those things can I clear, right? What loops that are open can I close?
Yeah.
And that can be relationships with friends. It can be relationships with, coworkers. It can be something someone said. It can be something that you felt as a response to something you saw.
Sure.
It can be any of those things. But one of the biggest ones is understanding what it is about it that bothers you. And then many times it's because you don't even understand what it is. Mm-hmm. And then it's really just doing that work and diving into it until you kind of like shed light on it and you're like, okay, now I understand this. It no longer bothers me. I have my attention back.
Yeah.
And so that was just a deliberate process that I ran through for 9 months.
Every day,
5 days a week. Yeah. For 90 minutes.
When was this?
This was 2017.
That's when you were launching.
Yeah.
GymLaunch.
Yeah. A lot of things happened during that period of time. So I was just all in on everything. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, I went all in on that. I stopped drinking. I, married Layla. I was just like, this is where I'm going. You know what I mean? And so it was just like, people were like, do you think that's the one thing? I think everything was the one thing. Like, I think it was, what was the one thing that changed? No idea. But it was just, I was really tired of what I was doing and really needed a different way of living. And so that's what I did.
And since that ended, do you carry out that kind of practice with yourself?
So Layla and I will talk more with each other of like, what's taking your attention? You know what I mean? That's usually the phrase that we'll use. But I think that the more frequently you practice it, the faster you are at detecting those things, and you stay clear, if that makes sense.
Totally
rather
makes sense.
than, because like you'll feel weighted and you're like, what's going on? But if you don't know how to detect that, the world just feels heavy.
Yeah.
And it's just like everything feels overwhelming.
Yeah.
When it's really not even a really huge task, right? And the easiest way I can describe that from a mental standpoint is if you've ever like had a math problem that you were looking at and you're like, I can't solve this thing. And then you go to sleep and you wake up and you're like, why was I struggling with this? This is not hard. Or you might have had a work thing, whatever. That's the easiest description of what it feels like to get attention back, in my opinion. And so all of a sudden these problems that used to be complex or really difficult to understand seem really easy to see the component parts and be like, I understand each of these pieces.
Right.
But if you don't have the horsepower because you're so distracted from all these other things in your life, you become really impotent as a person. You just have very low capacity as an individual and you can't accomplish much. Even if you have a Ferrari engine, it's being weighted down with all this other stuff that it's running the AC, it's running the, whatever the, analogy.
Yeah, 4 fat people in the backseat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How did you find that coach?
How did I find that coach? I was recommended to him by an ex-business partner.
Gotcha. It's like, hey, you suck at paying attention. You need to talk to this guy.
It's actually more or less what it was. He was just like, you are way too distracted.
Were you, from your own assessment, do you feel like you were like a very different person before that process?
Totally.
You were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same person, but just
you have your attention back.
scattered.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Scattered and overwhelmed.
Would you say most people are scattered today?
Totally.
Yeah.
Most people walk around just unsure and consistently reactive. They're just reactive. They just have emotions and they just feel them and they don't know what to do. Rather than being able to like see them, interpret them, process them, and be like, okay, And it just takes time, and I think it's just a deliberate practice.
Sure. It's like a muscle. You're
exactly.
You're good with muscles, Alex.
Yeah, I'm all about the gains.
It's the thing, man.
Brain gains.
Next question, he said, what do you like to do to train sales managers and support them best?
So we're actually in an interesting spot right now in our company. We have the best sales team we've ever had, and I've had probably 6 high-performance teams that I've run myself over the last 7 years. And the team that we have now is the best team. And if the last team I had, I wouldn't have said that was the best team if it had been that moment. It wasn't. I knew we had some issues. But this team is amazing because of the culture. And so currently I have one manager, he's a director, who runs both marketing and sales, which is I've never done before. But there's some really cool advantages to that because he owns acquisition. And so typically when you have marketing and sales complains that the lead quality isn't high enough or there's not enough of them, and marketing says sales can't close anything. And so it's just this constant battle. But when you have one guy who's responsible, then he's looking at both sides of the equation and trying to calibrate it so that we can just get the most money. Right? And so holding one person accountable to that has been really huge for me. Beyond that, we have basically what I would consider a sales lead. So it's kind of like the spirit leader of the sales team. And he's the one who really enforces the daily training. But if the culture is right, the whole team is bought in, which our current team is. And so we now just hired a new person this last week who just started, and he's diving heads first, and they're just like, this is how we roll. Like, either run with us or don't, but like, we're fucking going.
Yeah. And
so in terms of the processes, one is just installing the daily training. Second is just having a weekly cadence with them to understand what's coming up. And we do that with marketing and sales together because, right, exactly. Because if we're detecting, because the sales should be the front line to give feedback to marketing. And if they're both on the same team, then it's not this animosity. It's more like, hey guys, we're getting a lot of personal trainers on the phone and they're not qualified. They're like, okay, let's see if we can adjust the targeting, or maybe we can adjust the application or just the headlines to try and address that. And so it just works. It works both ways, and it works a lot better.
Okay.
I don't know if that was the answer you were looking for.
No, I mean, what's the cadence, I guess, of communications between you and the sales manager?
Oh, once a week.
Just
once a week.
Checking once a week.
Yeah, but once a week with the team and once a week one-on-one.
And when you talk to your manager, like, what's your mindset? What are you looking for?
This one guy manages both marketing and sales, and so it really depends on what, if I'm being honest with you, depends on what the bottleneck is. So if the bottleneck right now is marketing, then we're going to be talking about messaging hooks and what are the main directions we need to take for the ads that are coming out. If the bottleneck is on sales, then it's going to be how do we onboard more salespeople? How do we drill them? Where do we get some more people? So it just depends on what is the problem that we're dealing with, and that's what we address.
So something I've personally struggled with a little bit is trying to figure out, do I solve the problem or do I try and empower the person and let them solve it? What's your approach on that?
Really interesting. So there are, I think 4 or 5, I can't remember what it is, big beliefs that I've had broken that I feel like I routinely break for people who are trying to get to 8 figures or multiple 8 figures. And so this is an unrelated answer to your question in a roundabout way. One of them is to spend more on marketing, period. Like when we look at this might be crazy for you. So I looked at our total lifetime spent on marketing and our total dollars made, and we have a 35-to-1 return on our ad spend lifetime. So we spent $2.6 million and we've done $92 million in sales off $2.5 million of ad spend. And I should just spend more money. That's what I should do.
Do you look at that and go, I should have spent more than 2
Right, yeah, of course. But when I talk to people who are smaller in their businesses, they're afraid to spend money. And so sometimes it's just a belief. It's like, dude, you're spending $500 a day, spend $5,000 a day. Like, what's the point? Like, what's the bottleneck here? And so getting people to make that first step is one of them. The second one is increasing their price, right? You need to charge more, otherwise there's no profit, and I go through lots of explanations about that. The third one, because I'm going to get to the why I'm talking about this, is paying for talent. And understanding that the best people need to get paid like the best people. And so thinkers need to be paid much more than you expect, and doers need to get paid less. And so there's actually more of a dichotomy between those two things, because a thinker should be able to make the decision for you and make the right call. And in theory, you should be able to make a better call than you. And so I don't know if you've ever gone to a company and met an employee and been like, man, this employee's freaking awesome. Like, man, if I had this person on my team, and the goal for us is how can we create that experience for every one of our employees, right? And typically high performers are not, and no offense to anybody on my team, but people who, are not at 50 or 60 or 70,000 a year. Like a lot of times high performers are 150, 250 plus bonuses. Like that type of person has confidence, knows how to make decisions, has a track record, and they're not coming for peanuts. And I think the mistake that I've made was that I tried to turn a Camry into a Cadillac. You know what I mean? It's trying to push someone and empower someone who does not have the skills or does not have the bandwidth or doesn't have the attention because of other shit that they're dealing with in their lives to actually make good decisions. And so the delegation is one piece of it, but it's delegating to a team member that's capable. If the person isn't capable, you shouldn't delegate it because they'll make a horrible decision. but it's finding the right people and then building superstar teams. And I know that sounds really trite, but like until I internalized that and made that like my truth, then like the world opens up, because you know I don't do a tremendous amount in my company because the people that run those departments are better at it than I am. Like Suzanne is our CFO and she's way better at finance than I am. Like Megan knows all the HR stuff, or Jessica knows all the HR stuff, and like just all the people in our company just know their divisions way better than I do. I just need to make sure the strategy's right and then like the numbers make sense. But it took time. Like we replaced, so I went through this experience. I had 11 directors. I have now replaced all 11 over the last 18 months with new directors that are at that next level. Yep. Because directors we had were me putting, this is not a direct insult or anything like that to my former directors, but it was putting lipstick on a pig. It was trying to put rockets on a two-seater. It didn't make sense. They were at their point of incompetence. And they had gotten us to here, but they weren't going to get us to the next level. Yeah. And so that's the mistake that I make and that I see a lot of entrepreneurs make, is they're not willing to pay for talent, even though they have tons of margin in their business. And so hopefully that wraps around the answer.
So I mean, basically, if you're paying someone 150, 250 plus bonuses or something, you expect them to be a Cadillac, to be a Ferrari, and to solve the fucking problem.
Right. Yeah. And you should have a track. So one of my, I made this podcast. It was lessons from 2019. It's like 30 minutes long of literally every lesson that I learned of all my fuck ups. And one of them was that hire for track record, not potential. And so I used to hire for culture fit and potential. I'm like, this guy could be amazing. It's like, now I don't give a shit. It's like, fuck potential. Like, what have you done? Like, I don't want to know someone who knows how to run an Olympic gold. I want somebody who already has the medal. Yeah. Because there's a lot of things you learn along the way that you don't know that you're going to learn. Right. And so I want somebody, like, I feel like I'm buying someone's experience at a discount compared to the cost of the mistakes I would make if I didn't have them. And so it's worth paying a premium to pay down my ignorance tax on what I don't know that's going to happen, that they should know.
Yeah. Do you do thinking time?
No.
So you mentioned ignorance tax.
No. I should, but I don't.
But
I think all the time, and at the same time...
Here's the thing. Like, of all the entrepreneurs that I know, you are probably the most self-aware. Well, you're very aware of strengths and weaknesses, and you're open with admitting both. Whereas most entrepreneurs, it takes them like 3 months to admit a mistake, and you admit one in 3 days, and you pivot immediately. What do you think plays into that self-awareness?
I don't know. Crippling insecurity, probably.
That's the secret.
Yeah. Well, there's I saw this study that Sam Ovens posted it's basically there's 3 components of hyper successful people. One is sense of superiority, that they're better than everyone.
Sure.
The other is incredible insecurity, feeling that they're never going to be good enough, and then impulse control. That's it.
That makes a lot of sense.
And I think it's the more maxed out all of those are, the more you feel like you're better than everyone, the more you feel like you'll never be good enough, and the harder you can control your impulses. Yeah. Those 3 things are what amplify the individual, and none of those things are IQ. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But so why do I admit that? It's just like, I think it's just whatever's necessary for winning.
But when you say I sit and I think a lot, like, what does that look like?
So, Layla and I walk probably 3 times a day. And so I'm a talking thinker. And so for me, that manifests, I don't do a lot of solo thinking time. I do a lot of talking out loud time. So I'm like, I wonder if and that's like, you know what I mean? And then I start bouncing for a while. And sometimes I feel bad because my like teammates or my employees will be like, I feel like you just talked at me for 30 minutes. And I'm like, yes, but I feel like we made progress. And so that's actually what thinking looks like for me, is I'll have kind of one-off conversations about like something like, I need to put some mass to this. Yeah. I need to bounce this off of you. And that's usually how a lot of the big thoughts get moved forward in the company. Gotcha. But as we've evolved as a company, one of the big things that I've like at my current entrepreneurial place, the big 3 for making decisions has been probably I think I might have shared it with you. It was from Keith Cunningham's The Road Less Stupid. Really good book. It's what's my upside of making this call? Because usually as entrepreneurs, we're weighing out decisions, costs and benefits, right? Should I make this? Should I change this price? Should I? Whatever. We make a million decisions like this. What's my upside? What's my downside? And the third one, let me assume the downside, and can I live with it? And I think that for a really long time, I just looked at upside, downside, and just said, well, if I have so Jeff Bezos is one of my favorite quotes, is if you have a 10% chance of getting 100 times payout, you should take that bet every time, knowing that 9 out of 10 you'll be wrong. but what if the minimum bet at the casino is $10 and you have $30? Should you still take the bet? Right? Mm-hmm. And you getting down to zero means that it's going to take you X amount of time to bounce back. And I feel like that's a far more nuanced question, and I think that that's far more the reality. And so I read that first quote, and I made a lot of decisions in the first 2 or 3 years of business that if I could make them again now, I wouldn't have made. Because whenever you make any change, you always incur the cost of change. Mm-hmm. And so I think I changed a lot of things in my company from happy to glad. So it's like you change the word from happy in a paragraph to glad, and it's the same thing. Yep. And so there was really no substantive change that happened, but we did still incur the cost of change. Yep. And so I got the cost of change, but I didn't get the benefit. Yep. And sometimes just things being new and exciting gives you minor pops, then it goes back to maintenance, right? And so I would be far more sparing and deliberate with the choices that I would make, and I feel like I am now, in terms of changing direction with the company. I mean, I still need to work on it. But that's where my kind of deliberate practice that I'm working on for me as an entrepreneur right now is doing less and doing more at the same time. Yep. So making fewer changes and doing more, repeating successful actions. Yep. Like, okay, well, if we're spending this much, spend more. If we have 3 sales guys, get 6. If we have, you know what I mean? It's just expanding instead of changing. Yeah. And I think one of the mistakes that a lot of earlier on entrepreneurs, myself included, make is that we want to put jetpacks on a 2-seater and figure out how to get more out of this thing rather than just admitting the fact that you just need a bigger fucking car. Yeah. Right? And that's it. Like, you still need to drive the same way. You just need a bigger car. And so it just means sometimes you just have to get more sales guys. You just have to spend more money. You don't need to change your business model to make more money. You just need to do more of what you're already doing.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me a lot of, have you heard of Warren Buffett's analogy about the punch card in investments?
Yes.
The 20 decisions?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's totally like that.
Yeah.
It's totally like that, but with your business to like strategy.
Yeah. Especially as entrepreneurs, I mean, you're talking about impulse control. We're always this idea, but it drives your team crazy, and there's the cost of complexity and change, which is guaranteed, but the reward of the change is not guaranteed.
Right. Yeah. And is the cost worth the reward, right?
Right.
Because the cost is assumed, and then you have the real cost, which there's cost of change is assumed, and then you have the true downside, which is like, well, what if it goes down? Can I live with that? Because I've definitely made some bets where I'm like, the downside was pretty high, and if I had thought this is going to happen, can I live with that? I would not have said yes. And it's nice thing is that you can apply it anywhere. So like, I'll give you a really real world example. It's stupid, but it's small. So Layla and I were working out on a vacation, and she brought her TRX thing. It was a hotel gym. And so they actually had a TRX hook, and I was like, oh, that's convenient. So I hooked it there. It was kind of a pain in the ass. I had to put stools together. It was all the way up, and I hooked it. And right as we were leaving, after working out, I was like, do I want to take this with me or not? Like, because like no one was at the gym. Like, it was totally one of those, like, no one's ever going to see it.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at this thing like it's going to be a pain in the ass to get that back up, get that down, and then do it again tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And so I was like, well, what's the upside? The upside is that I save time and effort from doing that. My downside is someone steals it and I can't use it for the rest of the workout and someone stole it. Can I live with the downside? No. Okay, then I have to go get it. It's just like, but like that was like literally applying.
Yeah.
And I don't know if if I didn't have that, I probably would have been like, fuck it, I'll leave it.
Yeah, that's so true.
But sometimes applying those, it was like, I can't live with the downside. I'll be really annoyed with that. And the downside is not worth it. And so it wasn't worth the upside. And so it's just applying that framework for a lot of decisions.
And so when you're making, when you are making a choice that this is a change, this is something we're going to implement here, a new task, whatever it might be, one thing I've struggled with is I'm like, oh, this is good. Let's focus on this, and this is the bottleneck, and we're raise this up. Is I implement it with team leaders and things like that, and then I get sucked into the whirlwind of everything else that goes on in the business, and I find myself forgetting to push it through or whatever.
Yeah.
How do you avoid like the whirlwind and stay focused on one thing?
I think it's a function of how good the people are. Really, it's kind of like that third belief of just like, if I say, hey Suzanne, I need you to implement this new thing with finance, I have no idea even how to do it, so I won't even be helpful. Right? I think where entrepreneurs struggle the most is where they have expertise. So it's harder for me to stay out of marketing than it is for me to stay out of finance. Mm-hmm. And so I think layers and degrees of separation is the only thing that I've seen. And be honest, I struggle with it, especially with marketing, because it's kind of like what I feel like I'm good at. And so the layers that have to be there is like Layla is a layer of protection against me, because and the thing is that Layla is amazing because she's an expert at operations and leadership and culture, but she's not a domain expert of any of the individual skills. And so because of that, she does a really good job delegating because she doesn't have the desire or what she perceives to be the skill set to do this thing better than the person who can. And so she never gets sucked in. And so she's able to take something from me, become the air filter, and then make sure that it gets executed. And that's been the single most effective thing that I've done. And so that's like the whole first follower theory, integrator, and what's the traction one?
It's visionary.
Yeah, visionary and the integrator. It's just really making sure that that number two in your company, like when you talk about thinkers, like when you're starting and you're going from like 0 to 1 million or 3 million, you really have like a manager, right? When you go 3 to 1 million a month, you have like a director. But once you get like 1 million a month plus, it's really about somebody who can really lead operations and people. It's about leadership. Mm-hmm. And so I think that role goes from manager to director to really like a COO leadership type, like a C-level executive at that point. And that person may be the person who could make all three of those changes, but it's very rare, right? Because there's 3 jumps that happen in every individual's life. You have individual contributor, you have manager, and you have leader. And it's very rare that you can have all 3 of those jumps. Most people can make one, maybe. And a lot of people can't even make one. Like I'm sure you've seen star salespeople, great individual contributors, can't manage.
Sure.
And plenty of managers really detail-oriented, you can follow KPIs, but can't lead. Mm-hmm. And so those are the pivots that I think that you make at least from the 1 to 3, 3 to 10. $1 million a year.
Yeah.
Jumps that the person has to change. And typically it doesn't mean that those individuals and the managers don't exist. It just means another layer has to get added, which is how corporate infrastructure becomes corporate infrastructure. Yeah. And then every entrepreneur's like, I don't want to build this. I left corporate America. It's like, well, the reason corporate America looks like corporate America is because that's how you make a ton of money.
Right.
Right. Like show me one corporate America, company that's that size that has a flat infrastructure. It doesn't exist, right? And like the entrepreneur who owns that company didn't want that. It just became a requirement for achieving the end goal. It just is what it is. You get sued enough times and eventually you have policies that are a pain in the ass. You know what I mean? You have HR that has to deal with stuff because of the legal system. And that's just an eventuality of how all businesses that get big enough have to deal with.
Yep. So as we kind of park this car and head in here, you've helped a lot of agencies recently.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of people, even in my audience, either started a social media marketing agency or wanted to in the last several years. Most of them fail, obviously. This is pretty obvious. We know that. Why do most of these new agency owners fail?
Well, most of ours don't fail. I'll tell you some fun stats.
Yours, but
yeah. I can tell you fun stats if you want them.
Bring it, dude.
So, I'll tell you, I took a small beta group of 10 guys. And the average guy made $6,000 their first month, made $19,000 their second month, made $34,000 their third month. That's the average. Top 20% was already $80,000 by month 3 per month. Pretty cool, right? And so the big issues that most agency, SMMA, whatever, have is that they're just not good. So that's the big one. You're just actually not that good, which is why you don't deserve to make more money.
And when you say not good, you mean at the actual fulfillment part?
Yeah.
Like they don't know.
And they're probably not that good at marketing, which is why they can't get customers. So it's like,
right. It's a really interesting thing if like you're not good enough to do marketing to get customers for your business. How are you going to be good enough to do marketing for the business that you want to get? Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. So the biggest one is that they don't take enough accountability for the client results. So, getting leads on a lead sheet is not exciting. It's not valuable, right? And so they don't use their business acumen to try and improve the acquisition process for the small business, which is typically what most of them are marketing for, is small business owners. And so they don't think, how can I get someone to make more money in their first 30 days? Because if they can make more money in the first 30 days, they can spend more money to acquire a customer. They can also spend more money on me, right? And so most of them price themselves out of the market. And by that, I mean, they try and undercut. So they're at $500 or $1,000 a month, which is basically impossible to make a profit, especially in a service-based business. Mm-hmm. So they run that price for themselves. They buy themselves a job and they try and keep those prices by hiring people and then they make nothing. So that's like mistake number 1 with the pricing piece. Mistake number 2 is that, again, they don't take responsibility for the actual mousetrap that they're teaching these people to do, which ultimately, like, we don't work with, I think we have agency owners who come in, and what we have with the product of our product, what we push out is a rainmaker. And so that's why we call it the community rainmakers. It's like everybody wants somebody who can just make it rain for them. Mm-hmm. And so that's a combination of multiple skills that you have to put together, right? Like just being able to run an ad is a skill. Learning how to write copy, headlines, images, right? And then learning how to build landing pages and funnel processes. And then there's also like, what is the upsell process once the person comes into the facility, which is what most agencies have no idea because they actually have never been in an in-person business.
Correct.
And a lot of them are like, well, and the third problem they have is that they can't pick niches. They try and niche hop. So we have a term in our community called a niche slap. I'm going to fucking niche slap you if you can't pick one, right? Because you can have a $100 million dentist company, you can have a $100 million roofing agency, you can have a $100 million gym agency. It doesn't matter, but you have to pick one and you can't have all three. Because it's like, how are you going to compete against me in the gym space when you also are dealing with physical therapists and chiropractors? When I'm going this deep on serving my clients better than you, how do you even think you deserve to get paid more? How do you think you deserve to get paid what we're getting paid? Of course you don't. And so it's making sure that they pick and stick with it. And so there's 5 stages in what we call in change that happen for any kind of behavioral change. And so one is uninformed optimism, right? Which is where the grass is greener and you're like, that looks exciting. So someone jumps into a new niche and they're like, this is awesome, dentists make money, I'm going to go after dentists. Then they go to stage 2, which is informed pessimism. They now know that this is not nearly as cool as they thought it was. These guys have horrible front desks, they're not business acumen people, they're a pain in the ass to make decisions, they're overanalyzing, cool. Stage 3 is depression or determination, right? It's the valley of despair. And so this is where like champions are made, where people fall off, which is where most people fall off. And so there's 2 paths from here. Path number 1, which is what 90% of people do, is they jump back to stage 1 in a different niche and they start over again. And they say, you know what? It's going to be chiropractors. Chiropractors are the guys that need to go. It's totally different. Yeah. Totally different. And then they find out it's not the same, and then they go to value despair. And they just continue this rabbit hole. And the false belief they have is, I'm going to do all 3 and see which one works. When in reality is, you need to pick one and make it work, because all 3 can work, but none of them can work together. And that's the fundamental fallacy that all of them come in with, because it's not like betting on horses. It's like you have a horse. It's really like having a horse that can become, I was trying to think of a name of a champion horse and I have no idea. So, a champion horse name.
Seabiscuit?
Seabiscuit, yeah. Like, it's really a horse that has the genetic potential to become a Seabiscuit, but you need to train it. But all 3 of them are. So if you have an untrained Seabiscuit, none of the 3 are going to win. But if you jump on and train it, all 3 of them can become champion horses, but you can't train all 3. And that's kind of how it is. And so you got to get them to pick and then go super deep on it so that they can reverse engineer their client businesses and ultimately become a rainmaker, show them how to sell, show them how to price their products appropriately, show them how the upsells work, and show them kind of like the public storage example I was giving you earlier, show them how to build a mousetrap. And so that's what Rainmakers is for us, is teaching all of the aggregate skills that together make you a far more valuable person, which is far more akin to a business consultant that is performance driven. And so the software that we built basically allows them to monetize off of performance rather than off of a fixed fee. And so with that, in our business, we've been able to, 3 or 4x the average amount that a client pays us every month, but that's because we're aligned with their outcome. And so by doing that, we can have variable pay based on the value that we provide. And so the problem is that if they switch your performance and they're lower performers, you get paid less. And so what's nice about the model is that it makes complete transparency in the marketplace. And ultimately, I think that that's where the marketplace will always go, is to a more transparent, the more efficient, way of paying. And so that's the platform that we, created with Alan, and we try all the training around it is to increase their skill set so that they can provide more value and then ultimately extract more value from their clients and also provide it. So it's just everybody wins.
Yeah, I remember I had an agency owner who was doing the lead sheet. That was it, and I remember asking him, I was like, so what's the conversion rate? How do those leads back out? And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, why don't you know? He's because I don't want to ask. Why don't you want to ask? Because I don't think it's good. Like, it's like, I don't want to look under the rock. It's like the ostrich and the head in the sand kind of thing. It's wild. But you have taken working with agency owners further than anyone that I know in doing this and pushing them that far. And but there's a software component. That's badass. What is that?
So we spent So we spent $4.2 million building a software over 2 years.
So wait, you spent 2.6 on ads.
It spent 4.2 on software. And so we spent a bunch of money on the software, and it was because it was honestly just to solve this problem that was bugging the crap out of me, which is that our gyms were not working their leads. And so the 90-second story is essentially, if I look at a gym and I say, how can I improve how much money this gym makes? If I work with them on sales training and drilling them and coaching and all that stuff, I can get someone to double their close rate, right? And so that doubles the throughput of marketing campaign. That's a big deal, right? Doubling is a big thing. But if I take one step further, or one step earlier in the funnel, which is just how many people are they actually getting at bats with, the low performers are getting 5% of their leads in the door, and the high performers are getting 50% of their leads in the door. So I saw a 2x difference in throughput based on sales closing ability, and I saw a 10x difference in throughput based on their ability to work leads. And so I was like, this one I can provide I can put technology around and probably beat or at least standardize whatever. I'd rather have everyone at 30% than have some people at 5 and some people at 50.
Yep.
And again, for my business, the people who are going to cancel are between 5 and 20 who are going to cancel with me.
Yep.
And so if I can just get everybody to 30, then I know, like, I get rid of my high risk candidates for me. And so we built the software, and it was also aligned with, I know, your business, which is it's all based on chat. Because pickup rates are going down. People don't want, like, everyone gets their phone rings and is offended by the fact that someone would call. It's like, are you okay? Is this an emergency? Then why are you calling me, right? And so it's even more so and more exaggerated with a lead, right? And so way more people respond via message. And so we created basically a bot that learns. And so through machine learning and humans, so it's both. Basically, it continues to see how humans respond, our humans, and it logs those things, and it continues to improve on them so that it can take on more and more and more of the conversations. And so, like, last month, we had 80,000 leads that it worked, and 85% of all the responses were from the bot, not the humans. And so it is able to, do a lot of working leads, but there's still a human component, and that's how it seems so natural, is because some of the messages that it's using are messages that have been queued before.
And what has it done for show rates?
Yeah, so we're right now on average 50% better than the average human. Not the best human, but we're 50% better than the average human. Mm-hmm. And so with and we do it for less.
So if I'm the agency owner and I was sending the dentist 100 leads and 12 of them were showing up, now I work with Alan, how many show up?
18 in that example, right? And there's 4 kind of pillars of lead nurture. I can go into this as deep as you want to go. There's speed, which has 2 components. One is the speed between when they opt in, when they get their first message, and also speed of response in general, because there's back and forth that happen. You have these windows of opportunity where a lead is
there
interested.
an activation related to this? Is it like the first reply? Is that something?
Oh yeah, I mean you need to be super fast in terms of opt-in to first message,
just to get them to reply.
Yeah, and then also just if someone, like, let's say Susie Q doesn't respond to 3 messages, and then day 2 responds, you might have a 5-minute window where she's sitting at karate practice before she got there early, where you might be able to have the opportunity to have that interaction, and if you're not there, you miss it. Right, so speed has those 2 components. Then you have personalization, which is, do I talk to Susie different than I talk to Dan? Right, you would probably as a person, so we want to make sure that the machine can do that. The third is volume of reach outs, which is how many reach outs do we have? Typically people call the lead once and then say the leads are bad, right? The leads don't work.
Yep.
And then the fourth is, and there's an optimal cadence that I could get into about, like, what times a day and all that stuff. But the fourth is one that we discovered, which is availability. And it's actually the single biggest predictor on throughput out of any of the 4 variables by a lot. And so if you look at it on a chart, it's almost a 1-to-1 correlation between the total availability score of a client versus the amount of throughput they have compared to hypothetical max. And so that means that if you're a business and you're trying to grow your business and you're only available to take new clients between 9 and 12 on Fridays, you're probably not going to grow because it's not convenient. Mm-hmm. And so we're in an on-demand economy, and so people will just go somewhere else. They'll just go to the place that's most convenient. Layla had 3 places the other day that she wanted to get, I can't remember, it was like hair or something done. And the first 2 had way better reviews, but the third one was available that moment because she was free.
Yep.
And so she went with the one that had fewer reviews, so better than social proof was convenience. Yep. And what's interesting to me is if you think about that with, like, Spotify and whatnot, I heard this from the CEO, is like, do you know the only thing that beats free is fast? So if you have free food, but there's a line, and food that you can pay for, it's the only thing that beats free is speed. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And so, anyhow, as an agency owner, what Alan allows you to do is you can now take over all the lead working, which means you have more control over the results of your client. And so with that, our agencies can build a mousetrap for their clients that's going to help them be profitable in the acquisition. They can run the ads, and they work the leads for them. So really, as far as a client is concerned, they're paying for ad spend, and people just walk in their door. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty magical experience for them. And then they just pay on performance, which is just that how many of these people showed. And so a big component of this was figuring out how we could know who showed without the honor system.
Right.
And so that took about 9 months, and it continues to improve now. So we have a machine learning team that looks at all the data and creates a confidence score of, based on 140 plus data points, is it likely that this lead is going to show up based on all of these things? And so we bill over X% confidence score. And so like last month, we were 96.2% accurate based on what they marked versus what the machine said. And so that just continues to improve over time. But what it does is it takes the honor system out of the equation, and then it allows the agency to bill for what they provided, and allows the business owner to not have to work their leads, not have to learn how to market, and simply have people walk in the door to close.
And so if I'm an agency owner and I don't suck,
Yeah.
how do I get started with that one?
First, you would wait 3.5 weeks because we have a waiting list. That's genuine. We really do.
You would prefer not to have a waiting list?
Yes, yeah, I prefer not to have a waiting list, but we have a waiting list right now. As of whatever day it is today, August 1st week. If you're listening to this later than August 1st week, we hopefully don't have a waiting list. But it's actually without ad spend. It's literally just word of mouth right now. So you just go to useallen.com. That's it. And then you'll see a video that's like 10 minutes long. Watch it. And then if it sounds like it makes sense for you, apply. And then we're just taking on application. And based on the conversation we had earlier, as long as you meet the qualifications of an avatar that we think is going to make sense, that we can actually help, then we will either reach out to you and be like, hey, we can work with you, or hey, we don't think you're at the level in your business that will, be able to help you the way we want to go. Because specifically, because we're a performance-based business too, I have no recurring fee. And so I'd rather have, personally, because now I can pick it, I'd rather have, 100 guys that I can take to 10 million a year than have 10,000 guys that are doing, 10 grand a month.
Right.
It's just, and it's also way more fun for me because
It's way more exciting. You've more interesting conversations.
Yes, it's not like how do I place an ad and
You're solving interesting problems.
right. It's It's more like how do I scale from 1,000 a day to 10,000 a day in ad spend? Like that's more interesting to me. How do I find my first high level directors? How do I find operations? How do I set cadence up in the business? How do I market and differentiate myself as an authority in space? Like those are the fun conversations rather than like
how do I set up a pixel?
Yes. What is retarget?
No, I was really asking how do I do it?
Yeah.
Okay, last question.
Yeah.
And we're going to totally shift gears here. 10 years from now, where are you? What are you doing?
So 10 years from now, I'll probably have exited both of these businesses, I think, either in majority or minority. So I might still be involved with them. I might still be majority owner and just have, sold a certain percentage of it. And that's mostly just risk mitigation. If 95% of my net worth is in the equity in my company, it's like, you never know what's going to happen. And so at a certain point, I'll probably take chips off the table. That's kind of in terms of like big things that would probably happen. And then I'll probably take those funds and start some sort of incubator. So some sort of like Hormozi Capital or something like that, which would be value add investing, where I would probably find companies that are doing 1 to 3, maybe $10 million a year, buy a meaningful stake, and then apply all of the knowledge that we have to get them to 30 or 40 or 50, and then basically flip them. Because that's I recently acquired a piece of a company this year, and it's honestly been great. It's been a ton of fun because it's all the good and none of the bad. Because they're still a CEO and they have their own team, and it's really me being able to provide all my black book of all of my contacts and providing the strategic advice of like, don't do that, I already did that. Don't do that, I already did that. Like, stay focused, do more, don't do different, and just just like moving them through the levels of 1 million, 3 million, 10 million, 30 million, 50 million, whatever, all those levels quickly, without having to repeat the mistakes. And so if I can do that, I can show tremendous growth in their businesses, which will then make them more valuable. And so it's just a win-win. And so that's like where I think I can provide the most value in the marketplace, at least with my current level of understanding. So I think that's what would happen in 10 years, or maybe less.
Where are you living?
We'll probably have we'll probably have multiple houses. So we'll probably have one lake house, lake/mountain house, in Colorado or Utah, because we like both of those. Probably one beach location. It might not be a beach house, but just in the beach area. And then obviously we have our place in Texas that we both like a lot. That's kind of like HQ, because it's just like work home base. But I'll probably have recreated that same home base in each of those areas, especially the mountain lake one. Because a friend of mine, she has a tremendously successful business, and she has 3 houses, and she actually runs it the same way. So she has the same clothes, the same office setup, the same makeup in all 3 of them.
Everything.
Yeah, and so she literally just grabs her bag, like she doesn't pack anything, and then she just hops in her NetJet and then just flies to the other place 2 hours later, and then she just is home. Like it just, I was like, I really like that. We should do that, and so that's what we're doing.
That's what I did with California and Puerto Rico. I have like 20 of these shirts at both places.
Keep fooking.
Fook
going.
Is that? I've been saying it wrong the entire time.
Been saying it wrong this whole time. Fook.
Fook. It's like a Vietnamese name or something. Awesome. Well, dude, thank you for sharing all the knowledge and the wisdom and stuff. More importantly, thank you for being such a hard worker and smart person to have smart shit to say and help so many people who are going to get an enormous amount of value out of this. So always appreciate my time with you, and we'll see you guys later.
Rock and roll.
Why would a millionaire show you how to have a full-time paycheck without having a job at all? It's because I just wrote my brand new book. It's called Screw Jobs. It's totally free, no strings attached. You hit the link below. You can download it for free right now in 2 seconds if you want. And here's the thing. See, I have never had a job in my entire life, yet I became a millionaire when I was 24 years old. In the last 12 months, I've helped over 150 people from over 60 countries begin to earn a full-time income as well without having a job. This is the digital age. We don't need jobs to live life on our terms and do the things that we want. So if you want to get my brand new book, it's completely free for the rest of today. Just hit the link below. You'll get it in literally less than a minute. And part of this book, by the way, was dedicated to my college professor who told me I would never amount to anything. So if there's anyone in your life doesn't believe in you, doubts you, says you can't do it, get this book and let's show them what you truly are capable of.